Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite. I am your host, Jim Chapman, and we are back with another episode in the Bad Teachers series. Before we get into today's episode, I need to shout out the newest global celebrity member, Miss Stacy Hazelton from Niles, Michigan. Really cool history, y'all, with Niles. It became a city over 300 years ago. And Niles is actually known as the City of Four Flags, and there's a reason for this. It has a real lengthy history, and over those 300 years, the flags that have flown over the city of Niles include the French, the British, the Native American flag, and finally, the U.S. flag in 1832. So once again, thank you so much, Miss Stacy Hazelton, for joining us on the Global Celebrity Patreon tier. If you want to see what all the fuss is about, go to Patreon at patreon.com/exposed podcast files. We do everything from early release, commercial-free episodes to bonus episodes to files, upload tons of those. And we also do quarterly gifts for our global celebrity members. Just tons of things you can get out there, bonus episodes. So check it out. And I appreciate each and every one of these Patreon supporters. They are the reason this show even exists. And we'll get into today's episode. And this time I'm bringing you to the great state of Arkansas and Siloam Springs, Arkansas specifically, to tell you about the case of Mary Faith McCormick, who was a 32-year-old sixth grade social studies teacher at Siloam Springs Intermediate School. So we're going to jump right into it. And on August 8th of 2014, the Siloam Springs Police Department, they get a call from the parents of a 12-year-old female. And these parents stated that their daughter had borrowed the phone of one of her friends at school, and she saw some inappropriate messages between McCormick and a 13-year-old male. So police, they go interview this girl, and she has quite the story to tell. Now, according to the 12-year-old, she wanted to send kind of a silly picture of herself through Snapchat from that 13-year-old boy's phone. So she opens the Snapchat application and she notices a social studies teacher at that school, who was Mary Faith McCormick, had snapped the 13-year-old boy who owned the phone. So, like curious kids are, she clicked on the snap, and there is a picture of Mary Faith McCormick in a bathrobe, smiling with her cleavage pushed up, kind of like Dolly Parton style, right? Now, at this point, the 12-year-old is like, whoa. She then snaps the teacher back and she says, quote, "Why would you send that?" To which McCormick responds, "Why? Don't you like it?" Now, remember, McCormick thinks this is the 13-year-old boy snapping her back. McCormick then responds with, quote, "I want to climb on top of your dick," unquote. So the 12-year-old looks through the snap messages further, and she discovers one picture of McCormick with wet hair while showing her breast, and then a text accompanying that said, quote, "I'm not dirty anymore," unquote. This is a 32-year-old teacher talking to a 13-year-old boy. So this 12-year-old girl, she goes home and she tells her parents, and here we are. So the first thing police want to do is they want to speak with this 13-year-old kid. They go pay him a visit, and according to the affidavit, the kid that is referred to in that affidavit as BB says that 2 weeks into the summer, he and his friend were talking about how hot Miss McCormick was. And BB was telling his friend, who was also 13, that he felt like Miss McCormick was, quote, into him. So his friend, he dares him to try and hook up with Miss McCormick. So BB starts snapping with Miss McCormick, and they snap back and forth over several weeks, and she's definitely playing into it, although the affidavit doesn't get real specific into what exactly she was saying to this 13-year-old. It does say that right off the bat, the teacher was letting the 13-year-old into her life verbally by, quote, sharing very personal information. And that could be anything from her talking about her marriage. Maybe she was having a bad marriage. And incidentally, she was married with a daughter, or it could have been even more personal than that. Doesn't really say. But regardless, that's what you would definitely call the grooming stage. When you hear me talk about the grooming stage, this is a perfect example. She is wanting to see how he's going to respond to her taking things from a teacher-student level to a more personal level. If he freaked out because somewhere in that text conversation she says, I'm having problems in my marriage, and he's like, I don't want to hear about all that. Well, she knows to back off. But if he continues to play into it, that's grooming. That's what she's trying to do. Then it gets even more egregious when the student tells police he asked for a picture of her vagina, which she sends to him. And then she requests a picture of his, quote, rock hard penis, which he sends to her. So BB continues on, and he tells the police about 5 weeks prior to when the officer shows up at his house to interview him, BB had spent the night at a friend's house, and they decided to walk by Miss McCormick's house. And when they did, she was standing outside, and he said she invited them in to watch a movie. And he said he agreed, but his friend declined and went home. Now, it's important to mention that later on, the 13-year-old actually recanted that story as it relates to the involvement of his friend. And he actually said McCormick picked him up and drove him to her apartment. I think initially when he was talking to police, he was a little bit scared and it was easier to involve another friend. And when you're 13, you don't realize the implications of involving other people in your shit, right? So regardless, he goes inside of her house, and he said they started kidding around on the living room couch. Then they started kissing. And then he said they went into McCormick's bedroom, where he said he sat on the bed, and McCormick climbed on top of him, and they started having sex. The policeman taking the report also noted that in an effort to prove this kid had actually been into McCormick's bedroom, he asked the kid to describe it. Tell him what it looked like. What did the furniture look like? The wall color. Where was the furniture placed? What color sheets were on the bed? Those sorts of things. And this kid was able to describe it to a T, according to that officer. The student even mentioned that McCormick brought him downstairs after the sex and that she showed him a video of Kevin Hart on her phone. And later in the investigation, the police did indeed discover that video of Kevin Hart on McCormick's phone, which proved this kid was telling the truth. Otherwise, he would have no idea what videos that she had on her phone. Now, in addition to all of that, the student allowed police into his phone, where they found some saved pictures of the teacher's exposed breast, as well as a bunch of suggestive messages. So, with all this evidence, police, they get a warrant to seize McCormick's digital devices, even before they spoke to her. They already had all this evidence. And that warrant included an iPad, 2 cell phones, 2 jump drives, and a laptop. And they head over to her apartment to, number 1, interview her, and number 2, seize that electronic equipment. So they go over there, they start interviewing her, and of course, according to McCormick, this kid's totally full of shit and was mad at her for what she said were, quote, unknown reasons. And it's important to note at this time, she did not know about all this other evidence they had. So police seize the electronic equipment and they access McCormick's Snapchat account. And they find multiple photographs and videos of the victim, along with a photograph of a woman's breast believed to have belonged to McCormick. So they arrest McCormick on a charge of rape.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1, go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2, collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3, play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4, unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
And this is in August of 2014. She promptly posts a $50,000 bond later on the same day. And as you would imagine, this is not a big city. Siloam Springs, Arkansas is on the smaller side, and people were shocked, absolutely shocked to hear about this. It was also discovered that in addition to the sexual encounter that took place at her apartment, there was an additional sexual encounter that took place with this 13-year-old, where McCormick actually picked the student up and brought him to a location where she was building a new house. And that was the premise. Let's go see my new house I'm building. Now, according to the affidavit, which I'm quoting here, the affidavit says, quote, the student told the officer that they started kissing and she gave him a blowjob. And then it says, which the student described as, quote, sucking his dick. Exactly what it says in the affidavit. And another thing that is worth noting, her father was also a teacher in the same school district, not at the same school, but the same district. Now, how embarrassing was this for her poor father, who probably knew every teacher in the district, I'm sure, probably taught forever. I mean, you just can't imagine the embarrassment. Not only your husband and your daughter, if she's old enough at that time to understand, but your father. So time passes. And initially, McCormick was going to go to trial. She was going to fight this thing because she was innocent, right? However, once she discovered all this evidence that the police had, they didn't just have the statement from this kid. They had pictures, they had videos, they had text. All these things she thought she had deleted. She ends up doing what they all do. She cops a plea. And on July 13th of 2015, Mary Faith McCormick, who at this time is 33, she pleaded guilty to sexual assault in the first degree, which is a Class A felony. And in Arkansas, that was punishable with a prison sentence ranging from 6 to 30 years. Now, prosecutors agreed to reduce the charge from rape to sexual assault as part of that plea agreement. McCormick told the judge that she had not been coerced into accepting that plea offer, and she also understood that she was waiving her rights to a jury trial and an appeal. The judge accepted that plea agreement as well as her guilty plea. And there were 3 conditions that McCormick had to abide by until her sentencing. 1, she must show up for her sentencing. 2, she can't commit any other criminal acts. And 3, she could not have any contact with the victim. And the judge warned McCormick that if she violated any of the 3 conditions, it could void the plea agreement altogether and the guilty plea would still stand, and then she would be sentenced likely to the maximum by the judge. So on July 30th of 2015, Mary McCormick appeared in court for her sentencing, and the court read a statement from the boy's mother. These are victim impact statements. According to that statement, it read, "There are no words fitting to describe the pain and sorrow my whole family has suffered this past year. We as a family have barely weathered through this storm. Although we see small bits of light at the end of this storm, our hearts are broken and our spirits are weary. The family had to close its business and move to another town because of the harassment and negativity McCormick's crime brought." And the court said the mother felt like she was responsible for leaving the gate open for, quote, "the wolf to attack her young, innocent sheep." The mother said, "I have sent my child into the public school system for over 6 years, not ever believing or thinking that one day his very own teacher, of whom we should trust, would be the wolf that would prey upon him. My son was a 4.0 student, an amazing athlete, but was robbed of his childhood." And that was the mother's statement. So the sentencing occurs, and McCormick is sentenced to 8 years in the Arkansas Department of Corrections. And according to her sentencing, she would have to serve at least 2 years before she would be eligible for parole. She must abide by a suspended sentence agreement for 12 years after her release from prison, and she would be required to register as a sex offender when she is released. She must also complete the prison's sex offender treatment program after her release from prison, and McCormick was ordered not to have any contact with that teen or any witnesses in the case. She was also ordered to not have any unsupervised contact with any minors except her biological children. So I say all that to say this. You talk about an easy sentence, in my opinion. She screws this 13 years old, twice.
Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
And is eligible for parole in 2 years. WTF. As expected, 2 years later, she indeed goes up for a parole hearing. This was on January 12th of 2017, but surprisingly, considering my experience covering these cases, it was denied. Then in January of 2019, she's up for parole again. Now, this is less than 4 years after the incident, and she pens this letter to the court, which I have the actual letter in her handwriting in front of me. And it says, "I'm writing to see if you would run my court fees and fines concurrent to the time I have served. I was locked up in Benton County from July 30th until August 28th, 2015. I have been at McPherson Unit from August 2015 to the current time. Since I've been here, I've accomplished many things. I took a week-long anger management course in October of 2015. In December of 2015, I took a Thinking Errors class. I participated in a 2-month course called Keys to Healthy Relationships for Personal Enrichment. I earned a certificate for this December 2016. I enrolled in a VOTEC January of 2016 where I earned 1,500 hours in cosmetology. I graduated in May of 2018. I took and passed the practical and written exams to earn my state board license. I am now a certified cosmetologist. I've worked in the beauty shop from May 2018 to current, and she means the prison beauty shop, where I've earned 1,009 internship hours. This is on-the-job training that has helped me prepare to do hair when I am released. I've also enrolled in SOFT. This is an intense group therapy that meets 5 days a week with a doctor to discover what red flag situations led to our crime, how to identify and deal with emotions, and give us many tools to cope with our past, present, and future. I graduated from SOFT in March of 2018. Another personal enrichment course that lasted 2 months that I participated in was Codependent No More. I earned a certificate. This was in June of 2018. The final course I took was on communication. This was 1 month course, and I earned a certificate in October of 2018. I'm also currently enrolled in SRT, which stands for Social Responsibility Treatment. We are learning about how loyalty, trust, concern, honesty, and responsibility will help us be productive members of society. All courses I have taken have been taught by the mental health staff. As you can see, I have used my 3.5 years of incarceration to better myself. I hope you will consider running my fines and fees concurrent with my time served due to all the positive things that I have done. This will give me relief of the $1,600 of financial obligations so that I may establish my life without such a heavy financial burden. Thank you for your time, Mary Faith McCormick. So the parole board, they take those letters and they review those. And look, credit to her that she was making good use of her time behind bars. Another thing the parole board reviews is a transfer eligibility sheet. And it's kind of like a record of how you performed while you were incarcerated. And just to go over hers, it lists the charges, of course, sexual assault, first degree by school personnel. And she had 2 charges of that she was in prison for. And it says programming while incarcerated. And I just went over those with you, but they're also listed on this form. Then it says major disciplinaries. So she acted up a little bit early on in prison. In 3/14 of 2017, it said that she got wrote up for refusal to participate in a treatment program, and her discipline for that was a commissary restriction for 15 days. She had a phone restriction for 15 days and visitation restriction for 15 days. And that was really the only write-up she had. And they also wrote the judge and asked the circuit court judge his thoughts. And it said this court has no objection to transfer eligibility for Mary McCormick due to the rehab program she has completed while in the prison system. So they take all that information and they make a decision. You guessed it. In January of 2019, she gets released from prison after serving less than 4 years of that 8-year sentence. All right, so I'm going to tell you another bad teacher story today. It's a multiple edition of bad teachers, and every now and then I run into cases involving actually multiple teachers with students at the same school, and occasionally they're even involved with students together. Or they team up to sleep with students. And I'm going to tell you about the case of Ashley Burkett and April Watson. And they taught at Jay High School in Santa Rosa County, Florida. So Ashley Burkett, she was a 32-year-old. She taught reading and special education students at Jay High School. April Watson taught at the same school. She was 33 years old, and she taught math and was also the JV cheerleading coach. And both of these ladies had 2 children themselves. So in July of 2009, an investigation began after an anonymous letter sent to the Santa Rosa County School District alleged a sexual relationship between the 2 teachers and 3 then 17-year-old boys. Now, the males were not direct students of the teachers, but they did attend Jay High School. And of course, school officials, they get this letter and they send it directly to the Santa Rosa Sheriff's Office. And they say, we need this investigated. And an investigation into the incident then started. So the first thing the police do, they interview the 17-year-olds. and the 17-year-olds told investigators that they had sex with the teachers between July and October of 2007, which was a couple of years before this was reported. So at the time that these students were interviewed, they were 19, almost 20 years old. Now, two of the boys said they had sex with April Watson at her house, and they also said that they had sex with April Watson at Ashley Burkett's house. So Watson was sleeping with two of these students. The third student said he had sex with Burkett at both her house and at Ashley Watson's house. Now, it didn't specify if the sex took place at the same time at each one of these ladies' houses. For whatever reason, it didn't specify that, so I'll leave that up to you to wonder. But certainly, these two teachers were very close friends when they're having sex at each other's house with students, right? Now, it's important to note that the age of consent in Florida is 18 years old, with the only exception to that being if the sexual relationship falls under what is known as the Romeo and Juliet law in Florida. And let me tell you what that is. That's a statute that protects teenagers from harsh penalties for consensual sexual relationships with other teenagers. The law applies when the age gap between the two people is no more than 4 years and the younger person is at least 14 years old. So if you're a senior in high school, you just turned 18, your girlfriend is a freshman and she's 14, you can get in some trouble, but you don't have to register as a sex offender for the rest of your life, for example. So moving on August 6th of 2009, Burkett and Watson were both charged with having sex with underage students in 2007, and they turned themselves in to authorities. Now, of course, police interviewed them, and during that interview, they did both admit to the sexual activity, and they were both subsequently arrested. Ashley Burkett was arrested and charged with 3 counts of sexual assault with victims 16 to 17 years old. April Watson also arrested, same thing, 3 counts of sexual assault with victims 16 to 17 years old. And it shocked even some students at the school when this came out. As a matter of fact, one was interviewed. His name was Max Nasati, and he was 18, who was a recent graduate of Jay High School. And he said the two young blonde teachers were friends. He said they both helped with cheerleading teams, and he even said he recalled seeing them jogging together after school. He went on to say Miss Watson, she was young and attractive, and Miss Burkett, she was also pretty attractive. Quote, I mean, they were like friendly with the students, but I would have never imagined anything like this. So unlike some of the other cases that we cover, this was not out there amongst the students. Now, Burkett and Watson, they were due in court in early December of 2009, but requests for continuances and things like that were approved by the judge. This is common in these types of cases, and of course, that delayed their next court appearance until late January 2010. Now, initially, during their arraignment, they both pleaded not guilty, and they got out on bail, right, pending that trial. So on January of 2010, Burkett and Watson, they do a reversal and they plead no contest to 3 counts of unlawful sexual activity with certain minors after yet another plea deal in these bad teacher cases that I cover. So the sentencing gets scheduled for April 14th of 2010. And at that time, the state attorney, his name was Bill Eddins, he said under the Florida sentencing guidelines, the lowest permissible sentence for these ladies is 33 months, so a little over 2 years. And then finally, they get to the sentencing stage. And this was on April 16th of 2010, and were both sentenced to 15 months in state prison and 5 years probation, which included 18 months of community service. And there was a stipulation saying the teachers will be required to register as sex offenders upon release. Now, after the sentencing, several people involved in this case, they spoke out. Assistant District Attorney Christy Hankins mentioned asking the judge to order that the teachers spend at least 5 years in prison. Hankins said the idea that they were teachers was absolutely revolting. And this is 2009. It was out there, but not out there like it is today. I mean, today you can't pick up a paper. It's so sad. And it's why I do this podcast. You can't pick up shit without seeing these teachers screwing all these students. But back then it wasn't as talked about. Hankins said it's the adult's responsibility to make the right decision, not the 17-year-old boys. Let's be clear, there was no remorse until they were caught. Hankins also addressed what she said was a gender disparity when it comes to cases in which adults are accused of having sex with children. Quote, if this was a 29 and 30-year-old male teacher who had sex with a female student, it would be an uproar and an outrage, and everybody would be out to get them. Period. And this is a female prosecutor saying this, and it's so true. That's why I focus on the females so hard in these episodes. Certainly, it's a problem on both sides, but there is a disparity there, and I hope that you're realizing that as we go along if you didn't already. And it's why it's so important to share these episodes. The defense attorneys in this case for both ladies, they also spoke out, and they said the boys in the case said during depositions that they didn't think their teachers should spend time in prison. One of the attorneys said, I don't think they should go to jail because it's 100% voluntary on both sides. What the hell? Both attorneys called for a reduced sentence that included no jail time. And Watson's attorney said everyone is subject to human frailty. She made a very serious mistake that will follow her the rest of her life. I'll agree with that. He went on to say the former teachers were immediately remorseful with investigators, which proved to be in their favor. Also in their favor were that the teens were willing participants. So these two bad teachers I just told you about, they did indeed serve 15 months. And on May 9th of 2011, they were both released. And they had some stipulations. One of them, they'll forever be on the sex offender registry. And after 5 years of post-incarceration, this was in 2016, they both completed probation, and they were released off of their probation. However, neither will ever be allowed in the teaching profession again. So one of those cases, y'all, where these teachers were actually in cahoots together, sleeping with these students at each other's houses. Totally bizarre. And that is a wrap for this episode of Bad Teachers. Thank you again to all my Patreon supporters. Wouldn't exist without you. None of this that we do. You make this show roll. And until next time, for Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.